The University of San Carlos Accountancy Department presents the Code of Ethics for Professional Accountants in the Philippines, presented to you by Marina Cato, Group 12. To begin with, according to the code, the responsibility of an accountant is to provide information that is meant for the public interest. Thus, it is not exclusively meant to satisfy the needs of a particular individual or client. A professional accountant shall comply with the following fundamental principles. First, integrity. It is to be straightforward and honest in all professional and business relationships. It also implies fair dealings and truthfulness in every transaction. Second, you have objectivity, to never allow bias, conflict of interest, or undue influence of others to override professional or business judgments. Thus, a professional accountant shall not perform the service if a circumstance or relationship biases or unduly influences the accountant's professional judgment with respect to that service. Third, we have professional competence and due care. It is to maintain professional knowledge and skill at the level required to ensure that a client or employer receives the competent professional service that is based on current developments in practice, techniques, and legislation, and to act diligently in accordance with applicable technical and professional services. Fourth, we have confidentiality. It is to refrain from disclosing any information to third parties without proper and specific authority unless there is a professional or legal right or duty to disclose, nor to use the information for personal advantage. And it is the need to comply with the principle of confidentiality continues even after the end of relationship between a professional accountant and a client. Lastly, we have professional behavior. It is to comply with the relevant laws and regulations and avoid any action that would discredit the profession. Professional accountants shall not exaggerate claims for the services they offer and to make disparaging references to the work of others. Knowing the different circumstances and situation that an accountant might face, different threats and engagements might occur. Thus, this code established a conceptual framework that requires a professional accountant in complying with the ethical requirements of the code and to meet their responsibility to act in the public interest. Thus, one shall determine whether appropriate safeguards are available and can be applied to eliminate the threats or reduce them to an acceptable level. One should take qualitative and quantitative factors into account when evaluating the significance of a threat. However, when threats cannot be eliminated or reduced to an acceptable level, either because the threat is too significant or appropriate safeguards are not available, the accountant shall decline or discontinue the specific professional activity involved and resign from the engagement or the employing organization. Talking about threats, we get to know that threats are created by a broad range of relationships and circumstances. These threats fall into one or more of the following categories. First, self-interest threat. It is a threat that a financial or other interest will inappropriately influence the professional accountant's judgment or behavior. Second, we have self-review threat. It is a threat wherein the professional accountant may not appropriately evaluate the results of a previous judgment made or activity. Third, we have advocacy threat. It is a threat that a professional accountant will promote a client or employer's position to the point that the professional accountant's objectivity is compromised. Fourth, it is familiarity threat. It is a threat that due to long or close relationships with a client or employer, the accountant will be too sympathetic to their interest. Fifth, you have intimidation threat. It is deterred by acting objectively because of actual or perceived pressure. These threats can be eliminated or reduced by certain safeguards, and these safeguards can fall into two categories. First, safeguards created by the profession, legislation, or regulation, and second, by safeguards in the work environment. Moving on, we have professional accountants in public practice. A professional accountant in public practice shall not knowingly engage in any business, occupation, or activity that impairs or might impair integrity, objectivity, or the good reputation of the profession. The work environment safeguard of a professional accountant in public practice is comprised with firm-wide safeguard and engagement-specific safeguard. Included in the firm-wide safeguard are the leadership of the firm, the policies and the procedures to implement and monitor quality control, the documented internal policies and procedures, and the like. While on the other hand, we have engagement-specific safeguard, which include to hire an accountant who is not involved with the non-assurance service, review the non-assurance services, and to consult to an independent third party, and by rotating the senior assurance team personnel and the like. Furthermore, the following are the important aspects in the code that should be tackled. According to Section 210 of the code, in accepting clients, one shall determine whether acceptance would create any threats to compliance with the fundamental principles. Also, one should periodically review acceptance decisions for recurring client engagements. Next, we have changes in professional appointment. When one is asked to replace another, one shall determine whether there are reasons for not accepting the engagement. Depending on the nature of the engagement, a direct communication with the existing accountant is required to establish the facts regarding the proposed change so that the professional accountant can decide whether it would be appropriate to accept the engagement. We have conflicts of interest may arise in performing professional service and can be a threat to objectivity. Such can be created when a professional accountant provides services that relates to two or more clients and whose interests are in conflict. Next, second opinions happen when a professional accountant is asked to provide a second opinion on the application of accounting, auditing, and reporting of the company. Fees and other remunerations. A professional accountant may quote whatever fee is deemed appropriate. The fact that one may quote a fee lower than another is not in itself unethical. Contingent fees are widely used for certain types of non-assurance engagements but may create threats to compliance with the fundamental principles. Gifts and hospitality. A professional accountant may be offered gifts and hospitality from a client. Such offers might constitute threats to compliance, but the existence and significance of a threat will depend on its nature, value, and intent. When gifts are offered to a reasonable and informed third party, one might consider it trivial and may conclude that the offer is made in the normal course of business without specific intent to influence decision-making or to obtain information. Custody of client assets. A professional accountant in public practice shall not assume custody of client assets unless permitted to do so by law or with additional legal duties imposed. Holding such great threats to compliance with fundamental principles. Those mentioned must be understood properly since dealing with those can lead to certain threats if handled inappropriately. Moving forward, we have independence for audit and review engagements. In the case of audit engagements, it is in the public interest and therefore required by this code that members of audit teams, firms, and network firms shall be independent of audit clients. Independence is comprised of first, independence of mind, the state of mind that permits the expression of a conclusion without being affected by influences, which allows an individual to act with integrity and exercise objectivity and professional skepticism. Second, independence in appearance, the avoidance of facts and circumstances that are so significant that a reasonable and informed party would be likely to conclude. Under networks and network firms, the firm shall be independent of the audit client of the other firms within the network. Those charged with governance, even when not required by the code, applicable auditing standards and law, regular communication is encouraged between the firm and those charged with governance of the audit client regarding relationships and other matters that may reasonably bear on independence. Next, we have documentation. It provides evidence of the professional accountant's judgment in forming conclusions regarding compliance with independence requirements. Next is engagement period. Independence from the audit client is required both during the engagement period and the period covered by the financial statements. Engagement period starts when audit team begins to perform audit and ends when an audit report is issued. Threats to independence may include a loan or guarantee of a loan to a member of audit team or the firm from an audit client, created when a member of the audit team has a close relationship of the director or employee in position that can exert influence in the preparation of the client's accounting records or financial statements. With that being said and tackled, I think that would be all with regards to the Code of Ethics for Professional Accountants in the Philippines. Thank you for listening and I hope you've learned something.